Hello and welcome to Semi-Adult, a podcast that's all about navigating the bumpy road that is adulthood, with your hosts, V
and Annie.
And today's episode is going to be about what it's like being Black in America. So before we jump into our topic, we'd like to just check in with each other. So Annie, how has your week been? Any highlights, any lowlights? Spill the tea.
It's been busy. It's been really, really, really busy. I actually am in the middle of transitioning jobs right now. So, I mean, you know how it is. Every time you're leaving, you kind of have to wrap your things up. There's some things that you just can't wrap up no matter how hard you try. And I feel like, how do I say this? Expectations change a little bit. People are kind of looking at you almost like looking for a reason to say something that like, oh, you're doing this because you're leaving or whatever it is. At least that's how I perceive it. So it's just been interesting, and I'm just trying to, hold my head up high, do the best that I can do, and, leave with dignity.
Yeah, those 2 weeks, when you put in your 2 weeks, are so awkward as someone who's like, been through a couple different jobs. Although honestly, I've only quit one job.
It never gets easier.
Yeah, the rest have just been like they were short term, but it's not easy. Like writing that letter, having to like slide that over to someone or email it,
and it's
just
never
be like,
just a letter. Like you have to have a conversation. It never is just like you give this letter and then it's just unspoken and everyone knows. Like there's no avoiding that confrontation, that conversation, that why are you leaving? And it's just like,
And you never want to be like full, like, honestly, if we could be fully honest about why we leave jobs, the way the tea would be spilt. But you never want to end things on bad notes. So you just have to be like, oh, like a different opportunity.
And you also don't want to come off as ungrateful or just like, I don't know, almost like, what's the expression? I'm not good at those. Like looking a gifted horse in the mouth. I don't understand that, but I think that's it. But
that's true.
You don't want to come off the wrong way either, but I think you're right. I think that if you could say it all, just no filter, without that damaging the relationship long term, then I think a lot of things would be different. I think that company cultures would be different. I think that maybe people would hear things that they almost need to hear. And what they do with that information is their problem, but if they choose to take it as constructive criticism, it could truly change the workplace for future people. But it's unfortunate that you can't always do that.
I feel like I probably wouldn't say it to their face, but low-key in my exit interviews, like when it's like a piece of paper that you write out, I be giving my very honest feedback. But I'm mostly doing that for the sake of future people because I'm like, listen, like that didn't work out with me. And especially when you see potential in a company and it's stuff that that like they're probably just not realizing that they're doing wrong or is like harmful to their employees. So I'm just like, here's a little tidbit of tea that will maybe help you with your retention rates.
Do with that what you will.
You don't have to implement it. I mean, it doesn't affect me. I'm leaving. But just a little bit of tea that could make a big difference for your employees. So I'm proud of you for going through that, those 2 weeks with dignity. It's really hard to do so. I feel like that's a moment when you want to crack, but you also have that hope of like, I'm leaving. It's okay. This is short term. There is an end in sight. And that does help.
I'm the kind of person where like, I just don't want to give anyone a reason to have something negative to say about me. Like, when I leave, like, at the end of the day, every job I've ever left, I felt the same way. Like, you just can't say anything bad about me. Like, I did my job to a T down to the very end. I was respectful to everyone down to the very end. And I choose to conduct myself in that manner. And that's just, like, the reputation that I like to carry. And I kind of swallow it and move forward because I'd rather leave that way than, like, sometimes you never know how your life's going to end up. You never know who you're going to end up needing to talk to in a future situation who would help you progress further in your own life and your own career. So I don't believe in burning bridges. Younger me so did, like, oh my God, little kid me, she was like, set the fire. But as I've grown, I've just had a lot of experiences, a lot of humbling experiences that have shown me that that's just not the way. So I choose to do things this way.
Yeah, little Annie liked to watch fires burn. That was definitely
She liked
accurate.
to set them.
set them on fire and watch with a little smile. Maybe burn some popcorn while she's at it and watch the show.
Too.
Yeah, that is definitely cheese. Well, I'm proud of you for your perseverance.
But enough about me. Tell me about you and your week, Miss Hustle and Bustle.
Well, we have been really busy over here, like busy girlies. I, in full transparency, like I do struggle with mental health. So I have highs and lows. And for a while I was riding on this high, like we got that energy, we were thriving. I had a lot on my plate, but I was like managing it, and not just managing it, like thriving while doing it all. And now I'm kind of hitting one of those slumps where my depression is like, hey, girlfriend, remember me?
You're like, no.
Thought you'd seen the last of me? And I'm like always like, yeah, I really did, but I guess you're back.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking. Yeah, so she's back, and she is, draining me of energy. I'm like tired all the time, so it makes it hard to like keep up with the schedule and the things that I put on my plate when I do have energy. But I'm trying to be really kind to myself and balance it and be realistic about what needs to be on my plate and what doesn't, because I'm very aspirational. And like, even when I'm going through a depressive episode, I'm like, I still feel guilty for not doing everything, and I still want to. I just don't have the energy to fulfill it. So I'm trying to balance that out. It was definitely a less productive week than usual, but I managed to do all the important stuff. Yeah, that's okay. I try to remind myself that, like, girlie was tired. I worked out today even though I felt like death. Like, I really did not want to. I had no energy. I went to my workout class and definitely like performed the worst I ever have, but I was like, I'm here.
You went. You performed.
I showed
up. More than I can
and
say.
That's all I can. I'm like, that's what we have to be happy for. So it's the little things, and I'm happy. I'm searching for a new therapist because mine is like, bye, I'm leaving, which is like, okay, go off. And you know what? That actually, it kind of matches into the segue into what we're going to be talking about today. But something that I have been looking for in particular is I'm trying to find a therapist that is either Black, Hispanic, or like me, an Afro-Latina, because my current therapist who's leaving is white, and I love her. She is very sympathetic and listens, but I would love to not have to explain what it's like to be Black in America and just be understood and like, there's a lot of things about me that, for example, you or other Afro-Latinas would understand without me having to like go into the details, especially because sometimes the details are uncomfortable for some white people to hear, and it makes them have to like maybe confront parts of themselves that they don't want to. And for a long time, I didn't even want to have those conversations because I didn't want to make other people uncomfortable. But especially with the Black Lives Matter movement getting so much momentum this year and more people feeling comfortable talking about racism, I have found that, I was basically silencing myself for white comfort, and I shouldn't have to do that, and I shouldn't feel inclined to do that. So even though it still makes me uncomfy, I go and I have those conversations. And a lot of what I was talking with her during our last session was about that, because for those of you who don't know, I currently live in New Hampshire, which is a very white state. And I'm originally from South Florida, where, even if there's not like a humongous Black population, it's like, is there?
It's very diverse.
It's very diverse. And there's a lot of Hispanic presence. And for me, like, as long as I have a little spice, a little something, it helps me to feel like a little sazon, if you will. Sazon Goya, although Goya has been canceled because they were, they support rum.
We don't talk about them anymore. But once upon a time, we loved her.
Once upon a time, we were there for it, and now we have to make our own seasoning, whatever.
Betrayal's a bitch, whatever.
Yeah, like, it ain't no thing. But it's hard because there's certain things, like jokes that, like, don't make sense to anyone else, but like those of us who experience it. And it sucks that in a way, it's like I feel like I'm not funny here because people don't get my jokes, or they take it to heart and they feel like I might be calling them racist, but like they get uncomfortable when the topic of racism is brought up at all. And I'm like, it's a joke.
It's just, you can laugh. It's okay. Like, I made the joke.
And I need to be able to, because no matter what I do, like, I can't eliminate racism. It's not in my powerhouse, not my wheelhouse to change that.
And it's something that's experienced from such a young age. Like, people don't talk about that, or it's not that people don't talk about it. I feel that it's certain types of people choose to ignore that it affects children, and they like to go about things in a very questionable manner, in my opinion. For example, like not acknowledging race and things like that in a classroom, when like little kids have homes like that they go home to every single day, and they have parents that influence how they think, the things they say, and it will come up in a classroom even if they're 5 years old. I mean, we have examples as far back as we can remember in school of just like, okay, so for example, Vivi and I moved to South Dos Ranches here in Florida when we were 8 and 5. So we were in 3rd and 5th and kindergarten. And we moved in South Dos Ranches, is a very like wealthy area here in South Florida. So the school that we went to was like very white, very, very white. Like we were the brown population. You can count like in a classroom, like there was like 1 or 2 little brown kids like sprinkled in. And for example, every February in the Broward curriculum, they go over slavery. And as an adult, I've heard a lot of the things that parents say and things say around their kids. And they're like, oh, I'm not racist or whatever. But like as a little kid who doesn't understand that, they take certain things in, and because they don't know how to properly process it, or take it as a joke, even though it wasn't funny to begin with, you know what I mean, follow me here. And it affects them to the point where, for example, if we're talking about racism in the 3rd grade or slavery and things like that, these kids in my class would literally like turn around and like look at me, and Vivi had similar experiences where these kids were like, they talk about like white people owning black people, and they turn around and they're like, I could have owned you. And I'm like, you can't say that. You can't say that.
I'm like, I'm 5 years old. I don't need this trauma.
And even at that age, I'm just like, this is fucked up. Like, you shouldn't be looking at me while we're talking about this.
And we're talking about Black pain. I feel like it sucks because the only times that we're really mentioned is in history is like Black suffering, and not like celebration of Black accomplishments.
Yeah, and that's really like what they tend to focus on in the curriculum, is just like the hardships and this and that. And like, yeah, everybody learns about Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King, even though it's a very washed up version of what really happened. That's a story for another time. But it's just the way everything is phrased, the way everything is posed, it's almost like to push it silently to like, I don't want to say that like the curriculum down here like pushes racism in any way, but it definitely brushes certain topics aside that matter and impact the kids that go to school in this area and should be addressed more properly. And there are things that are said, for example, I know a lot of teachers that have heard some messed up jokes happen right in front of them that they should have stopped, and they should have said, like, that's inappropriate or that's wrong, because it does make those kids uncomfortable, even if they laugh it off and pretend to be like, oh, those are my friends, whatever, it's funny. Those things hurt. That's what a microaggression is, and a lot of people don't realize, like, when I look back and think about some of my childhood friendships, they were filled with microaggressions. I didn't realize that, like, a lot of my friends were closet racist. Like, a lot of my friends were closet racist. And I, because I'm mixed, I guess, was like their token acceptable brown person. And I didn't realize that until I was an adult. And I didn't realize how messed up some of the things that they would say to me were, or how deeply they affected me, until I got older and could properly process those things. And nobody was talking about that as I grew up.
That is like the worst part about those microaggressions, especially growing up as a kid. I feel like the pressures in school, you want to fit in so bad that it's like, what choice do you have other than to just like laugh it off? And like later that would hurt my feelings and I would like be sad about it, but you never wanted to be the kid that like couldn't take a joke. And I'm using air quotes for that because that's just someone else's excuse for passing off a microaggression and a lot, like basically giving themselves a free pass themselves. Not here for it. And that's just one of the ways. Like, those are just some microaggressions that we faced in school. But there's also the very real issue of, and not to say that microaggressions are not real issues, they are very real. But for example, in medicine, this is something that I learned when I was older.
Started.
Yeah, we have both firsthand experienced a lot of racism in the medical community, and that it sucks, but that's why a lot of people in our community like don't trust doctors. And it's hard because then when it comes to something like this where vaccines are introduced and we need this to get to herd immunity, how are we supposed to be upset or, force people who have been wronged by the medical community time and time again to trust something that they are providing, and it's just hard. I mean, I'm like, your girlie is vaccinated, but I 100% sympathize with the people who are fearful of it, and who don't trust something that comes from doctors. Like, why do you think that there's stuff like curanderos or curanderas who are basically like in the Hispanic community, and this also exists within like Black communities, just like a local person who treats things with more natural remedies versus going to a traditional doctor, because you just don't trust. And a lot of that comes with the racism that exists in medicine, that they do not take you seriously, especially as Black women. And that may seem like, oh, whatever, like what does that affect? But that does lead to, the scariest fact to me is such an increase in mortality rates for Black women when giving birth. It literally makes me fearful. Like, I don't want to have a child, like birth a child myself, because I'm so afraid that I would die in the process because I'm not taken seriously. And this is a very realistic fear that I have to face, that, my white friends might not have to, because they're just thinking about like, oh, like, do I want kids? I'm like, do I want to take that risk to have a kid, or should I just adopt? Because it's not worth it to put myself at that greatly increased risk of death just because I want to have a kid, which is like a right that I should have, but I don't, because I know the numbers and I know what can happen to me. And there's also more so what we've actually faced, because neither of us had a baby yet, is just being gaslit. Like, the amount of times that I've gone to doctors and been in excruciating pain and they just brush it aside because they either think like I'm being a baby, or like, Black people can take more pain.
My favorite word is dramatic. Like,
oh my God.
When they're like, oh, you're just being dramatic. Like, I know that they don't teach you in medical school when you're going over bedside manner to call anybody dramatic in your profession. Like, I am paying you money to be here, and believe me when I tell you I don't want to come into your germ-infested office in the first place. I'm here because I have to be here. And just because I'm telling you something with a very calm and just like rational demeanor doesn't mean that it's not actually happening to me.
And the fact that we have to say that in a calm way, or else we'll be called crazy or just like, loud Black women. Like, we have to tell you this in a calm way so that you will take us seriously. And then you take the fact that we're speaking calmly to say that we're exaggerating the pain that we're feeling. Like, I promise you, I hate being here. I'm only at the doctor's if something's really messed up with me and I need help. And the amount of times I've gone to doctors and they never find solutions for me. Like, I always have something that's rare and they've never seen before. And I leave the doctors with like no answer ever. And that's happened every single time I've had like a major issue going on in my life. I've never gotten an answer. I have gone so far as to like have to research things myself. And then I go to the doctor the next time and I'm like, could it be this? And they're like, oh, wow.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's possible. And I'm like, why am I and Google, why are me and Google solving my issues when you
I'm still
can't?
Paying you for it.
Oh my goodness. It's so frustrating. And you can share more about like your experiences as well.
I mean, we'd be here all day and we don't have that kind of time. But I mean, long story short, I've had some like very severe medical issues for the past year related to like my stomach and my GI. And the first doctor that I went to down here was just, and she was a Hispanic woman. I think that's what hurt me the most, was that I just had more faith in her. I had more faith that she would give a shit about what I had to say and just take me seriously. And I went up to her and I told her I made my appointment. I was like, hi, I'm throwing up blood. And it's been going on for a little bit now. It's been going on for almost a month at that point, like when I went to her. And this was right before the pandemic, like, hit and everything shut down, so I could still, like, see her in person and everything. And she looks at me, and she's like, She doesn't even, like, look at my mouth. She doesn't, like, do a proper examination or anything. She hears me say this, she's looking at me, and I have this thing about me that, like, I can deliver the worst news in the just, like, deadest tone, just very calm. Like, something about, like, anxiety-inducing things, like, make me, like, shut down emotionally, so I just deliver everything very, very, like, as it is, and, like, no emotion at all. Just be like, I am, in fact, throwing up blood every single day. Oh, yeah, no, every
very
morning.
monotone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if that's what it was. Whatever the case may be, she just did not do her job. She literally, for those of you watching on YouTube, took her hand like this and just went, whoo, straight into my diaphragm. She was like, did that hurt? And I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it did. And she's like, acid reflux. I was like, I consumed an entire bottle of Tums. I do not have just acid reflux, ma'am. And also, did I mention that I'm throwing up blood? And she was like, no, that's it. Fine. She gave me omeprazole, told me to take it for a month, and she gave me antibiotics just in case. I did not go in there for anything related to antibiotics or wanting any or whatever, feeling like I needed any. She was just like, just in case, take this for 7 days. And that was that. And that was the beginning of my nightmare, and everything spiraled out of control. And 1 year later, I'm still dealing with the same thing. I just had a procedure done that confirmed that I'm, in fact, not dramatic or crazy. I do have severe medical issues that need to be addressed. And it's just disheartening that it took that much time, that much money, and just having to prove to different people that, like, I'm sick. Yes, me, right here, this person that came in with her insurance card, I'm sick. Please help me. It's what I'm paying you to do.
It's so hurtful that you have to, like, prove it. Like, I've already told you these things. Like, the fact that you're throwing up blood should be enough of a red flag to do something about it. And the fact that they were like, let's make you prove it to us is very disheartening. And another place in which, you know, being Black in America has affected us is in our self-perception. And this one is one that has just really, like, fucked me up in my life. And that's just, like, feeling ugly as you are. I remember growing up, being a little kid, and some backstory to us is we're technically racially mixed. We're ethnically Dominican, but racially we are Black and white because our mom is a white Dominican and our dad is a Black Dominican. So as a little kid, I remember vividly being in kindergarten and we had our Rockin' in the USA performance, which is like, okay, American propaganda. Anyways, I remember watching the footage. Yeah. I remember watching the footage and it was really zoomed out and I was like, how am I going to tell who I am? Like, which little dot that is? And that's when I realized that as my mom in the, like, video had panned across the whole group of kids, I was the only brown dot there. And I was like, oh, I'm brown. And, like, that's when I had first realized that. And that was, like, my first self-awareness moment of that. And ever since then, especially because my mom was white, like, I always wanted to be white. And I went to a school that was mostly white. And I hated that, like, I stood out without trying to. And I spent, especially as a little kid, I was very shy. And I spent so much of my life just trying to be invisible. But I found that I couldn't be because of my skin color. And, you know, some ways in which this developed was when I was older, like, for example, in middle and high school, I never assumed that a guy liked me. Like, you could do absolutely every obvious sign. I will never assume that you like me because I can have a crush on someone, but the reason I'm not going to tell them is because you have that extra barrier of having to wonder, like, oh, is he into Black girls? Which is something that white girls simply do not have to worry about.
And when we went to school, like, believe me when I tell you, the guys had no shame in telling you that you were cute, but they weren't into you because they weren't into Black girls.
Yeah, that's like, it's not just something that I like made up. Like, it was a very common occurrence. So like it's something that I feared, and I never wanted to face that because I already had my own insecurities about being Black. And I just knew that if a guy ever told me that, like, that was it, game over. Like, I would never recover my self-esteem. So I just never told guys that I liked them and stayed single like all of primary education. And it wasn't until college. Yeah, honestly, I don't regret that. I regret how I felt about myself. I wish I had been more confident because I look back and I was like, girl, you were so cute. And I wish that I saw that. Like, I saw what I see in myself now. And I wish that I didn't let the kids around me and the fact that I was one of the only Black kids, like, make me want to disappear or be like everyone else. Because now I'm happy that, you know, I am who I am and that I don't look like everyone else. Sometimes, you know, I do still want to disappear, but that's mostly because, like, when you're just having a bad day, it sucks when, like, everyone's always staring at you. Like, you are, like, and it doesn't matter in which way, because sometimes they look at you in disgust. Sometimes, like, you're a trophy. Like, it's just very weird.
Or sometimes it's genuine curiosity. They just want to, like, see, like, what's up.
Yeah. Either way, I'm like, stop perceiving me. I did not give you permission. But something that, especially that we do in those white spaces, are we feel that we kind of have to prove ourselves. We have, like, to go that extra step. And Anya, you can talk about how, like, literally this instance of when we were dressing up to prove who, you know, our professionalism just the other day.
Oh, yeah. So we are in the process of starting our own brand, like starting our own, like, little store and everything. And it's super cute. We're very excited. We're actually official, ladies and gentlemen. Our LLC was approved.
Yeah.
And while we was down here, we were trying to work out just our bank account situation, and we were going to different banks just to kind of feel them out, see if we liked them, if we vibed, and if we wanted to do business with them. And right off the bat, as we were getting ready, like, it was like an unspoken thing. We both knew we had to look a certain type of way going into this just to be taken seriously, because between our skin tone and our very youthful faces, people just get our life messed up far too often. Like, there's nothing that I despise more than going somewhere and someone being like, good girl, or all right, girl, come on. Like, I'm an adult. I pay my taxes. How dare you? Like,
how dare you?
Don't belittle me. And I want people to take me seriously. And we both, like, approved each other's outfits, like, very professional, light makeup, make sure, like, you look nice and things like that, because otherwise we knew that they weren't even going to take the time to answer our questions. And as it was, when we went, I'm not going to say the name of the bank that we went to, but we went to one bank, and it was, like, another woman that was there, and it was a woman of color, but she kind of, like, when we told her what we were there for at first, kind of, like, she didn't laugh at us, but, like, scoffed a little bit to herself, like,
Like, she didn't even let us sit down. She, like, talked to us and made sure that we had all these things ready, that we did, so that we could start the process, while anyone else that walked in there got sat down and have that conversation. Like, we were standing at the door, like, literal gatekeeping.
She wouldn't let us, like, go any further. And I was like, this is so weird.
It sucks because it's like we have to deal with that sort of racism with, you know, with white people, but we also have to deal with it with fellow people of color. It's just like being the bottom of the barrel, and even fellow Black people will sometimes, like, treat you with suspicion. And it's really tiring living with a guilty before proven innocent label on your body at all times. Even walking in stores, like, always having to, like, I want to be dressed, even just for going to stores, I make sure that I'm dressed nicely so that they don't think that I'm there to steal, which, like, I shouldn't have to.
You don't get accidentally followed.
Yeah, and even then, sometimes, like, it's not enough. And I'm always, like, aiming to, because I can't blend in with my skin color, like, with, you know, sometimes with the clothes that I wear. And that's something that I've broken out of, and now, like, I wear whatever I want. I like fun, loud clothing. Like, people are going to look at me anyways, so might as well wear something fun. Give them a show if they're going to be watching. But it's something that I've had to grow out of and be really cognizant of, and, like actively make those steps. And I'm not gonna lie, it still makes me uncomfortable because I don't like being stared at, period. But I've just become more accustomed. I just don't pay attention to anyone that's staring at me. I don't give them the satisfaction or time of day to like let them know that they're bothering me by staring at me. And I literally like look right through them. Like, excuse me, if you're gonna be rude, I'm gonna be rude right back because I'm not going to acknowledge your weirdness. That's not for me. Yeah, Sue can play that game. And it's not just in how we dress, it's also in how we speak, code switching. Like me talking in a business meeting versus me talking with my friends versus just me talking in like a predominantly white space. I have to switch it up because one, there's certain things they're not going to get. And two, like I want to be taken seriously. And it sucks that I have to change how I naturally speak so that other people will take me seriously.
My favorite is when people are like, wow, like you speak very white, like you almost seem white. And I'm like, what does that mean? That I got an education? Like, thanks mom and dad, that was their one goal and apparently you succeeded.
That stuff is, it's so messed up. Like, and it's a backhanded compliment. And that in itself is like another microaggression. Like trying to tell you something that they think is good about you. But I'm like, why? You would not say that to a white person. Like, wow, you sound so educated. Yes, girly, I did go to school, but that has nothing to do with this. Like, this is
I went to school with you. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I went to school with you. What? Are you saying that to the rest of our classmates? Or are you just saying that to me? Or, yeah, when people call you Oreos. Oh, my God. People would say that to me all the time growing up. They're like, you're so white. Honey, first of all, I grew up with all these white people. What did you want me to do? I cannot control that, but those are just a couple, just a couple tidbits, a little sneak peek. Yeah. Just the absolute tip of the iceberg of some of the ways that being Black in America just affect our day-to-day lives and affect the lives of other people like us. Just some things, if you are Black, like, thank you, you get it. Like, thank you for listening in, solidarity. We are in this together. If you're not, I hope that it gave you, just some insight, and hopefully it will make you think twice about how you treat other people. And not to say that our listeners are the type of people who would be performing these microaggressions, but just be cognizant and know about what we're going through. Like if you're going into the medical field, making sure that you're taking that extra step to educate yourself and not using white patients as the standard, because that's really what it is. White patients are the standard when you go to medical school, and you're going to have to take an extra step to make sure that your practice is inclusive. And that's extra work, and not everyone's willing to do it. But I hope that you are, and thank you so much for listening. This topic is something that we hold so close to our heart, and we talk about it all the time. I'm so grateful to have a sister and best friend, because I would not survive all of these microaggressions without being able to call her right after and be like, do you know what the fuck just happened to me today? Because
same, because like you just need someone. Yeah, you just need someone who gets it, who's on the same page, that you could be like, is that as ridiculous as it fucking sounds? It is. It is, huh? Wow. People are weird.
Yeah, like 1000%. You need that community. Community is so important when you're dealing with, tough shit, and being able to make light of it sometimes with each other in the, I'm not saying that white people should be making fun of this stuff, because you shouldn't, but this is not me giving you a free pass, but it's how we deal with trauma. It's, if you can't change it, at least we can have a laugh sometimes, because we need that shit, okay? But thank you so much for listening in, and we hope to see you in our next episode next week. As always, you can send in some recommendations to semiadultpodcast@gmail.com, and make sure to follow us at semiadultpodcast on Instagram and TikTok, and semiadultpod on Twitter. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.